I'm not ashamed to own my Lord, nor to defend his cause. Maintain the honors of his word, the glory of his cross.
Well, our lesson this morning is the Christian's attitude towards murmuring. There, it came on perfectly. That's good. In this lesson, we're going to try. I'm going to try and hold us back to not to make too many applications to us, because the end of this lesson has lots in there for that. All we're going to do this morning is look at Numbers chapter 16. But to begin with, murmuring is defined as low muttered complaints or grumbling. And in our day and age, complaining makes more sense to us. It's more commonly used today. I thought, for example, in our house, I usually hear, "What are you complaining about now?" Not, "What are you murmuring about now?" But that may be, though, because it's not low-spoken complaining, low-spoken grumbling. I wanted to be heard, so I speak up so that Tammy can hear. The thought I had for us is, why do we complain? And if it is that you don't complain, why do you think others complain?
I just had a question. Would you say that that'd be muttering sort of under your breath then?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's why murmuring, to me, we don't, complaining is more thoughtful to us. So my thought was, why do we complain? I thought I'd give you an example of my complaining to open things up with. But commonly heard from me is that no one on this highway can drive.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, is that true?
No.
Right. There's a lot of good drivers, isn't there? And I am not the best. So my attitude towards the impatient and the reckless drivers should be, as Tammy often says to me, be thankful that they're in front of you and not behind you. Jared?
I think complaining sometimes has to do with lack of patience.
Oh, yes,
Like,
yeah.
Well, I'm not going to get into it.
Oh,
You
okay,
said
yeah.
not to, but I think that's why we complain a
Exactly.
lot. You asked why we complain.
Right.
Lack
Patience.
of patience.
That's right. Oh, we want to hear that. So in a few words then, what are some of the reasons that cause us to complain? Jeremy just mentioned patience, which is true. We seem to work only in high gear. We don't have time to be patient with others. But what are some other thoughts about why do we complain? Can you think of any?
I don't get what I feel I deserve.
Okay, yes.
Attitude of entitlement.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll put that maybe under wanting more. Doesn't matter what it is. We want more, which leads to covetousness, doesn't it? Sure.
Anger. You're angry at someone else for either something that they did, or you're projecting your own anger onto someone else. You did something, but you're blaming someone else.
Right. Good point.
It wasn't me. It was I did what I did because you did this to me. And so.
Right. Now you say that, it's commonly heard, well, I'm not as bad as my brother. I'm not as bad as my neighbor. In other words, what? Then that means we can overlook mine That's what I'm doing. I'm overlooking my own problem because I'm blaming it on someone else. But also, one that I thought is especially true of me is the fear of trying or doing something new. You know, I've seen that. Maybe it's a lot in men, maybe because we're the leaders of the household, maybe because a lot of physical jobs fall on our shoulders, but sometimes we're afraid to try, and it's something outside of our comfort zone, so then we complain about it. But I started the lesson this way to help us see that complaining is commonplace. There's more negativity around than positivity. And most of us accept it as normal. Complaining is something normal. We do it, and we encourage it, I believe, by listening and then partaking in those types of conversations. And if the truth be known, I might venture to say that 90% of what we complain about is really outside of our control anyway. There's nothing we can do about it. Now, we may, along with friends, think that complaining is all right. Everyone does it. We just live with it, okay? But our lesson wants to show us what God thinks of it. What does God think of the complaining? And we're going to begin in the Old Testament, and we want to look at what happens when murmuring is sent God's way, not to those around us, when it's sent God's way. And I kind of thought on human nature. It's kind of jumped out of my mind. I've seen how complaining and murmuring can be slightly different. You and I may want to be noticed or heard when we complain, so we speak up, depending on who's listening, okay, and what we are complaining about. Sometimes we're not as vocal. We may adjust our voices considering who's around. But I thought about it, I thought, well, who, when upset with God, raises their voices to God? And I thought, that puts murmuring into perspective against God. And as if that really mattered anyway when we're complaining to God, if we speak up or if we mutter, because God knows what we think anyways, doesn't He? But people's murmuring and complaining, I believe, is geared to their surroundings. And we see this in Numbers 16 is a perfect example, I thought, of a few things here. First of all, it's what can cause one to start murmuring towards God. We're going to see that in number 16. And how it can affect others also. Not only God, it affects others in our story. And how it can, if it's not stopped, if it's allowed to progress, it will progress to the point of no return. In other words, the consequences are going to take place. And how it can be avoided. And also, of course, what does God think of it? So here in our story in number 16, it's called Korah's Rebellion. And it's called that because the Bible seems to place him as the front man. If you look in Jude chapter 1, Jude here is I thought my iPad died. Jude 1 here, Jude is warning the first century Christians of those who have crept in to their number with false teaching. And he compares them to, if you look at verse 11, Jude says, "Woe to them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, have run greedily in the error of Balaam for profit, and perished in the rebellion of Korah." That's why I said Korah seems here to be the front man. Because everywhere you read of this, it's called the rebellion of Korah. And in Numbers 16 then, and verse 1, Jared, do you want to read that one, please?
Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abiram, the son of Eliab, and On, the son of Pelath, sons of Reuben, took men. We did that in the purpose.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I thought, well, it'd be more
fine.
fair to give it to you than
There you go.
John or.
That's nice.
So Korah is the ringleader, and note that he is of the tribe of Levi. Okay, the Levites are descendants of Jacob's son Levi, and they were selected to serve in God's tabernacle. They were responsible for packing up the tabernacle whenever the camp moved, transporting and then reconstructing the tabernacle whenever the Israelites traveled to a new camp. And I'll get you up there. And the most sacred tasks, really, of the Levites included bringing the sacrifices, okay, before God. But they were reserved for the priests of the Levites, the descendants of Aaron and the brother and his brother Moses. Okay?
And being the son of Kohath, you would be related to Aaron and Moses, not directly as far as by that time. It's not like they were cousins, or probably cousins or anything. I don't know the exact genealogy, but being Moses was the son of Kohath, or a child of that family,
right.
And so was Aaron.
Right.
And so there were three families of Levites, and Kohath was the one for whom Moses and Aaron came. So
right.
It's from that one.
Right. And we need to remember that, what tribe he was from. And also then in Korah's company, we have Korah's accomplices. And that was Dathan and Abiram and On. And they were of the tribe of Reuben, which I found interesting. And the group was not satisfied with only 4 of them, as we will see. This group encourages 250 that I call Restless Men of Renown, and I call them that because they were leaders in their tribes, in their separate tribes. We call them elders. They were older men, and I call them restless because they weren't satisfied. And that is shown in the fact that they allowed Korah and Korah's accomplices to encourage them to join them. So now they're a part of Korah's rebellion. And this is really a fair size uprising, I think. 254 men, and they're ready to confront Moses and Aaron. I thought of a preacher, if the whole congregation here had an uprising against Jer, that would put him in a little shaky position. He'd be caught off guard with that. But with 254 people.
Compared to Israel at that time, we don't think of 250 people in a place of 2.5 million, probably. But you think of rebellions in other places.
Right.
There are rebellions that are upswells of like massive rebellions. But a lot of the time, it's a few people in the right place at the right time that can rebel against a government. Like, I suppose. It doesn't take a lot of people to topple someone. And that's true here too.
Right, that's right. But I thought of something interesting. Well, it jumped out at me. And here's a map of Israel's camp. And can you pick out something in this map that aided Korah in his uprising? I'll give you a hint, unless you can pick out, Jared.
Well, let's see if I'm thinking the same way.
Yeah.
The Kohathites were on the south side, and the tribe of Reuben was on the south side. And so they weren't that, it's not like they had to travel the whole camp.
Right.
They were there.
Right. Exactly. And the verse I had pulled up for that was close companions. They were, and when you think of the numbers, as Jeremy pointed out, there was 46,000 people in the camp of Reuben. Tribe of Levi, I couldn't find a number.
About 8,600.
Oh, okay. And that's a lot of people. So if maybe if Korah had to travel across over to Manasseh, I mean, you got to go through a lot of people. But what I thought was close companions and fence sitters, as I would call them, or undecided people, can be dragged in also by the constant exposure. They're all close. These guys are close together. They would come in contact with each other every day. And I thought of On. It seems that he started out with these men. He started out with Korah, but there was no mention of him later in the punishment. And to me it looks like maybe he repented and left the group. But in the beginning, he was close in that proximity. And so Korah could build his rebellion, could spread his thoughts out. And so having said that, let's just look at the basis for the murmuring. Korah's problem. Remember, he was a Levite. But he wasn't content, it seems, to just assist in the tabernacle, to do what he was supposed to do. He wanted to serve as a priest. And Jeff, I'll give you Numbers 16 and 10. And 16 and 10. And this is Moses speaking.
And that he has brought you near to himself, you and all your brethren, the sons of Levi, with you. Are you seeking the priesthood also?
So there's why I came to the conclusion that Korah is not content with what he's doing, with what his job was. And Moses even points out to him that God has drawn him in closely by giving him that opportunity, but Korah's wanting more.
When you think about it, at that time, the tabernacle had to be picked up, put down, picked up, put down. They were in charge of the holy things. The sons of Kohath were in charge of carrying out the covenant, the table of showbread, the candlestick. Those are prestigious jobs compared to the people who had to set up the tent and set up like the tent pegs and everything else.
Right.
Those are the other two. But he wasn't, as you said, content with that.
Right.
He wanted to be the person who stood. He wanted Aaron's job, gets to stand before the people and proclaim the word of the Lord, and judge the people like Moses did.
Yeah, exactly. And the other group, Dathan and Abiram and On, their problem, it seems, remember, they were Reubenites. Okay, so they were descendants of Reuben, and Reuben was the firstborn. And it seems that they had the thought that they should have more authority because they're the oldest son. In I don't know, in a lot of different cultures, the oldest son usually gets a bigger portion, doesn't he? And authority. He would have authority. Jeff.
Forgetting in Genesis 48 or 49, I forget which one, I think it's 49, Jacob strips Reuben of the birthright, gives it to Joseph, and Ephraim also has the same problem when it comes to authority later in the story. Because Joseph received the birthright, now Ephraim needs to have authority, forgetting it was judges or the king or whoever. And I think you're right. As far as the tribe of Reuben, like, what about us?
Yes.
Who gave you authority?
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting that they both had two different objectives. Okay, it seems Korah wanted to be in the priesthood, and his accomplices seemed to want a little more authority. But it's interesting, though, that they're united. They flock together. And basically, though, it boils down to their disrespect for authority. They each had different complaints, but at the bottom of the complaint is authority. They didn't respect authority. And I kind of thought, too, that they weren't content to rebel alone. And I thought, why is it when we're discontented, when we're in that complaining mood, why do we look to drag others into the same frame of mind? You ever thought of that? I know why, as a younger man, I've done that. And it's true to murmuring souls that we see now. He drags in another 250 leaders. And these were men of supposed renown. And I say that, suppose, because it seems they set aside their maturity, their roles of authority. It's like in a family, we all look to our fathers. Well, if your father abandons that position and becomes a clown or something and disrespectful, then he's no longer a man of renown, is he? And that's why I called these leaders, and then they joined the uprising.
Sometimes we have strength in numbers where 250, they probably thought they were representing what we might call the silent majority.
Right.
The more people you have, there's a lot of people we think, if there's a lot of people who have these complaints and are willing to speak out, there's got to be more and more and more people who are just afraid to speak out.
Right.
And so we think more strength in numbers. The larger the number, the more likely it is our complaints are going to be heard.
Right. And we can't say that deep down this group didn't know who they were about to contend with. They were foolish in their thinking. But it's also interesting that rebels rarely give the real reason for their attacks. And we'll go back to Numbers 1. And so Jared read the first verse. Jeff, do you want to read 2, 3, and 4 then? Please.
And they rose up before Moses with some of the children of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown. They gathered together against Moses and Aaron, and said to them, "You take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among you. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" So when Moses heard it, he fell on his face.
Okay. Now I thought it was interesting here. What do they kind of base their reasoning here. Remember I said sometimes we hide our motive and we try and disguise it.
You're too busy. You've got too much on your plate. Certainly you need helpers there.
Right, that's right. But what does he...
Well, verse 3. Take too much upon yourselves. Are you?
Yes, that's the point. I missed that.
Yeah.
That's a good point. But what does he say in verse 3? What's the...
He says basically that we're all the same, but you're taking a higher position over everybody.
Right. He's saying that they're also priests. And I wondered at first, well, was that true, what he was saying? If you go back to Exodus chapter 19, and I'm thinking this just shows us chapter 19 and verse 6, somehow how we can disguise and make it like we have a legit rebellion. But here in Exodus 19 and verse 6, we read, "And you shall be to me," God speaking here to Israel, "you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel." So they're arguing their point, aren't they? They're trying to make like, well, we are priests. Well, yes, you are, but not in the role that you're trying to steal.
And I don't know if you can answer this right now.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I don't think God has set apart the priests yet. When he said that in Exodus 19, he hadn't spoken from Mount Sinai yet to people.
Yes.
He had not. Like I said, God may have intended to. We can't get into God's mind, but he hadn't said it yet. I don't think about Aaron being a high priest. Aaron was certainly Moses' mouthpiece. And so I'm wondering if context here would help, like as far as for Korah.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking that. But was this not after Sinai?
No, this was before. They've just approached Mount Sinai in Exodus 19.
When they had the rebellion?
Number 16 is after Sinai, but Kingdom of Priests is at Sinai. That's what I was saying.
Oh, okay.
So if you're coming along saying, well, maybe Korah's claiming priesthood because God said it in Exodus 19 at Mount Sinai.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he's sort of taken out of context what God meant.
Right. But hasn't God set up?
Now, in number 16 he has.
In
number 16 he has. Aaron is a priest.
Right. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's why I looked at it from the point of Korah's trying to sidestep his rebellion a bit here. Oh, well, this is what God said.
Yeah.
Well, at the time of this rebellion now, and we can apply this next week in the church situation and in the New Testament, but at this time now, Moses and Aaron they speak with God, they meet with God, and then they tell the people. And this is what Korah wants, and he's using that excuse. Of course their kingdom was priests. We are priests also. But not in the sense that Korah is trying to steal here, grabbing the authority. That's a good point. So the argument was, well, we've discussed that, his argument was that, hey, we're a kingdom of priests, so I should be allowed that position.
Sort of like us.
Yeah.
I know you're going to get to it. But
Yeah.
It's sort of like us saying, well, Jesus is high priest. We're a kingdom of priests. Therefore, I should be high priest. Well, no.
Right.
I said, if you're trying to make a comparison,
Yes.
I know you're going to get to it, but you're trying to make that comparison. That'd be like us today doing it.
Right. Exactly. And that's what he was doing. Really. So we see that Moses and Aaron, though, they don't defend themselves. Okay? They come, and it's interesting if you go back to, we'll go back to number 16 and we'll stay there. We're probably going to run out of time anyway, but we'll stay here. But we see there after this complaining is confronted, Korah's rebellion has already upset Moses. Because we read in verse 4, so when Moses heard it, he fell on his face. Now, I realize that was a sign of worship and showing his worship to God, his trust in God. But it's also, to me, a sign of, is Moses getting fed up with all this? We know he does at different points. Korah knew Moses' position. And, we've been in this predicament ourselves at certain times. When you're trying to do the right thing, you're trying to have someone understand, and they stand up against you to do wrong. Your attitude is, I'm tired of this. I'm sick and tired that you're not listening and understanding. And I see here where Moses took that attitude, and it was Korah's fault. Korah caused that. His complaining has now brought down Moses. Never mind what we're going to see with God, what it does with God. But if we'll read some verses here. We'll try 2 verses each and see how it goes for this reading. Maybe I'll skim through the next one. But we're going to see here now, Moses is preparing, for the presence of the judge of heaven and earth. This group is going to meet in front of God. So we start at verse 5 in Numbers 16, and we could take 2 verses each. Maybe I'll come up to you, please.
And he spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, tomorrow morning the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near to him. The one whom he chooses, he will cause to come near to him. Do this, take census, Korah and all your company.
Go carry them and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom the Lord chooses is the Holy One. You take too much upon yourselves, you sons of Levi. Then Moses said to Korah, hear now, you sons of Levi.
Is it a small thing to you that the God of Israel hath separated you from the congregation of Israel, to bring you near to himself, to do the work of the tabernacles of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to serve him? And then he has brought you near to himself, you and all your brothers, the son of Levi, with you. And are you seeking the priesthood also?
Therefore, you and your company are breaking against the Lord, and burdens together with you with me against you. And Moses seemed to call them and Ezra, the censor of you, and but he said, they will not be.
Is it the small things that you have brought us up out of land flowing with milk and honey? Hear us in the bitterness his action make a purpose for us. Moreover, you have not brought us in a land flowing with milk and honey, not given us inheritance of Jews and vineyards, that you put out the eyes of rich men, you will not come up.
Then Moses became very angry, and he said to the Lord, do not regret their offering. I have not taken a single token from them, nor have I done harm to any of them. Moses said to Korah, you, all you company, be present before the Lord tomorrow, both of you today, along with Aaron. Each of you take this part and put this in each of you bring the sinner before the Lord, 105 circles. Also you and Aaron should each bring his husband. So they each took his own portion and put fire on it. He let the scent of it in the stood of the doorway of the tent of the meeting with Moses and Aaron, to for a symbol of the invasion against them and of the tent of meeting. And the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation.
Okay, well, our bell's gone, so we're going to run out of time. We'll come back to this next week, but just a couple quick points here. Moses has called them now. You bring your complaint. It's not against us. It's against God. So they're aware of that now. So he tells them, then we'll meet with God. And if you notice, it's interesting that Dathan and I'm trying to find the quick verse here. That might be in the next section.
Abraham and Dathan don't come up.
Yeah, they wouldn't come up. They were a part of the rebellion. They were gun-ho in the beginning of this. Now we're going to stand in front of God. They're not willing to do that.
I'm not